Today is August 25th, and the last post I made was early this morning. I was being tortured. Probably you can notice that one of my eyes is different than the other. One is droopier than the other one from yesterday, from the 24th, and that was because I was being tortured all day then. To my ear, which I think is causing some kind of a stroke effect. And it's possible I was eating something that caused it, but I don't really think so. I pretty much was staying away from some things that I had thought might be causing it. I think that it was more of a stroke effect from being tortured. So I'm not completely sure yet, but I'm sure that I will figure this out. All day today I didn't make any posts because I was trying to organize some things for college, but even that was very hard. I just tried to ignore what kind of pain I was in. However, I was in excruciating pain and not able to put up a YouTube clip, or not able to make a video clip, and try to take care of college and do that at the same time. Otherwise I would have done both. I am now being tortured. Somebody quit what they were doing. The torture to my ear was quit about 3:30 today, 3 or 3:30, and they quit torturing me to my teeth and to my neck, and the minute that I started making this post, I am now being tortured to my left ear again. And it's the inside of my ear. I was in so much pain all night last night and all day today that I ended up having to take a ton of over-the-counter medication for it, which my parents knew about. I mean, they knew that I was in a lot of extreme pain. I think that part of the reason I am being tortured right now is because someone is wanting to try to catch up to what posts and video clips I've already made, and I don't believe they want some of this information to go out to the public without viewing it first. And I think that the information about Canada and what kind of collusion was occurring between the United States and Canada is a concern to them. Is a concern to both the United States and to Canada. So I find that I stall a lot more and I say a lot more when I'm being tortured because it's distracting every time they do this to me. I would like to talk about what kinds of things were happening right before I left the country to go to Canada. As I described, I was trying to get FOIA from the FBI. I was trying to get FOIA from the Portland PD. I was being obstructed by police in Washington State. I read that if you sue a public kind of place like a hospital, you have to give a notice first. So I was they already knew that I was planning to sue, but you have to give them like a notice that you intend to sue first, and then they have a chance to reply, and if they don't do anything about it, then you can go ahead and file your lawsuit. So I took that over to the hospital, and they knew that I then had to file it in court because they were getting a copy. So on the way, the doctor that was in charge when I dropped it off was Hughes. And when I left with my son and we were driving from Wenatchee then to Spokane, we were trying to get to Spokane in time before the courthouse closed because we left in the afternoon. So anyone who knew that I was going to the courthouse knew that I only had so many hours to get there before the federal courthouse closed, before 4 o'clock or 5, whatever their closing hours were. And they knew that I was en route with my son to this courthouse. So I ended up getting stalled again and delayed by another cop who pulled me over and told me that I was driving negligently. First he said I was speeding, and then he decided to change it to negligent driving. He harassed me, he made a lot of inside comments. It was very obvious to me that he had been told to go after my car. He was basically waiting for my car to come through his area, pull me over, claim I was committing negligent driving when I had my son in the car with me, which wasn't true. And he spent an inordinate amount of time on that ticket, basically, I believe, to prevent me from filing my motion at the courthouse before the closing hours of that Friday. And if they basically blocked me from filing that on Friday, what it meant is that it was an entire, so many hours of gas money and time and energy, but mainly gas money when I didn't have a lot of money. It was the whole tank of gas all the way there, the whole tank all the way back, and it was money that was completely wasted. I didn't have a lot of money to spend. So at that point, I was over in Spokane with my son, and I thought about calling my cousin to see if we could stay with them while we were over in the area, and it looked like we were just going to have to go back to Wenatchee. And I do remember that we were being followed everywhere we went, and the reason I knew that I was being followed was because this car was following me everywhere, and I decided, well, I guess I'll take a back alley, like someplace that nobody would go to and no one would be normally driving into. So I went down this back alley, and sure enough, not too long afterwards, this car was behind me, and I had parked into like a cul-de-sac off of the alley, and then I turned around, and right about the time that this car was thinking that they were following me, I then came out of the corner with my car, and I was going the opposite direction, passing them. So that was just one of several vehicles that was following us. We were followed all the way back to Wenatchee by more than one person in a car, and I didn't think that everybody was it was very weird. So I knew that I knew I was being followed in Oregon, but I had lawsuits that were filed, and even though I was trying to file the preparation for another one, I didn't really understand why we were being followed so closely. And I really just think that it was just more of the same thing, basically. So it was really shocking. I was not able to contest that negligent driving ticket, so it just went onto my record. And the reason I wasn't able to contest it is because then my son and I was being very seriously tortured. So this cop was a state cop, from what I remember. He was coming out from a small town, but I think that he was a state cop. And I tried looking him up, and I found out that he was on the same baseball team as one of the doctors from Wenatchee, and I think it was Hughes. I think that I found out that they basically had some kind of intramural police baseball together. I did a little bit of research and I found out some other things, but then, as I say, I was being tortured. The more I looked into things, while my computer activities were being surveilled, the worse the torture became. So at some point, at first when I was then being hit with these things that almost caused blackouts and vomiting and diarrhea and everything, I was being accused of using too many painkillers. I was being mocked by some of the people from the ambulance, and I was being accused by doctors. Here I had this horrific pain again. It was like having migraines and not being treated for pain. basically this time they were trying other kinds of torture, and they were giving me painkillers, but anyone in their right mind knew that that amount of painkillers was never going to be sufficient for that kind of pain. I was taking, to describe the pain level, I don't really know. It's really hard to compare one person to the other and how narcotics will affect them. So it's really hard to say, this person is taking a really high level of narcotics if their body for some reason doesn't process the medicine in the same way. And there are differences with different people for whatever reason, genes and different things. Redheads, strange enough, need more anesthesia than people with brown hair or blonde hair. And it's something to do with the fact that redheads also have another gene that correlates to pain receptors that is slightly different from the pain receptors of those who have brown and blonde hair. So, there are obviously really unique things about each person, and to try to judge someone on, what works for their body is really a hard thing to do. And I also think, obviously some people have built up a tolerance. Some people have chronic pain for so many years. They build up such a high tolerance to things that they might be taking a lot, but it really, their bodies are used to it, and they something less will not be sufficient for their pain. For me, all I can say is that my own brother and my family know that all through high school and being a nanny and outside of high school, I didn't drink. Everyone in my family drank coffee and tea, so they had caffeine, and took aspirin whenever they needed to. If I had even a slight tension headache, I refused to take aspirin. I had this idea, I'm just going to work through the pain. So I didn't take even aspirin. I didn't take aspirin, and my brother knew this about me. I didn't have caffeine. The first time that I started drinking caffeine was in 1997. It was either 1997 or 1998, because I did drink a little bit of tea. Like Constant Comment was the main caffeinated tea I had. Before I tried a Starbucks drink, but I didn't drink coffee. And my housemate, who came to live with me in 1997, couldn't believe I didn't have a coffee maker, and she had to bring her own because I didn't drink coffee. So most of my life I've not used any kind of alternative substances of any kind. And when I had these migraines, so my threshold is the pain. It's not like I had a really high tolerance to pain, or a really high tolerance to painkillers. So, 5 cc's of morphine should have worked for me on an extremely severe migraine. But the pain level was so severe that, and I do remember the first time that I was ever given a Vicodin to help with the pain while the inflammation or everything else that was happening with the migraine went away. And I remember that it was the first time I thought that I felt any kind of relief at all, in any way. And that was when I was in Lake Oswego, I believe, at the time, living at the Myers house, a house of different women. So then much later, when 10 cc's of morphine is what basically meets the pain threshold or the pain level that I have for these migraines, it really then, I think the first time I had a 10 cc, it worked, but there was still a little bit of pain, and I told the doctor, so he said, well, you can have 20 if you still need to.